What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Foundation First Fitness Show. This is episode 66. It has been a solid 4 months. I want to say 4, maybe 5 months that I haven't put out an episode. It's been a crazy, hectic summer for me between all of my off-season athletes, some of the other camps, and some of the other groups that I had going on. It's just been a whirlwind of stuff going on here, so I haven't really been able to put anything out yet. Basically, I think one of the things I wanted to touch on initially was that I will be doing another podcast. There's another series of podcasts that's going to be going on. It's going to be devoted specifically for health professionals. So it's going to be a little bit more technically oriented, a little bit more detail oriented. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to follow for those of you who don't have that in-depth background on strength conditioning or rehab or nutrition for that matter. But if you do want to check that out, it will be coming out soon. I will let you know the details as we get closer to that date. Now, for today's episode, I wanted to kick things off by talking briefly about a couple of things. Number one, if you guys are still looking to get some running stuff in, I will be putting up some more running content on my Instagram page, Bobak Owen. I was going to say www, but that makes no sense. You just look up Bobak Owen, BABAKOWEN on Instagram. You will find me there. I will be putting out some content on running, some training programs and some stuff like that, just to kind of give you guys a little bit more to work with as we wind down the running season for those of you who are north of the U.S. border. So anyway, moving on to today's topic. One of the things I usually get asked a lot, particularly by runners, because I think it's one of the issues that they usually run into, which is, do you eat before you run? How much do you eat before you run? And this also holds true for many athletes as well as some regular gym goers, people that are just trying to get in shape. I usually get the question of, should they be eating before they go to the gym? How much should they be eating? The common theory is that, as many of you already know, don't eat before you, if you eat too soon, if you don't wait 30 minutes after eating, you're going to get a cramp or something of that sort. Now, in reality, that may or may not be true. I really don't think it is. I've never really heard of anyone getting a cramp. I've worked with professional athletes and teams and stuff for years, and so many of them eat before they get out onto the ice or out onto the field, and they have never really had any issues with any cramping. So I really don't think that's true. Now, what I will say is, what I usually will tell people, one of the things that you should be paying attention to is the simple concept of core stability. As you introduce food into your body, you're going to be changing the internal structure of your organs, because it has to accommodate for the space of that food you just ingested. Now, there's a difference between a small amount of food where the space that you're going to be taking up is fairly small. But if you overeat and you eat a pretty sizable meal, I would say a pretty sizable meal, or you have something that gets you a little bit more bloated than usual, that increase in internal size will actually hinder your ability to properly contract your core. And what happens is, when your core is contracted, it actually allows you to stabilize. So it's fending off a lot of injuries. It's promoting proper function. So if your legs are trying to move independently of each other, you need core stabilization to get that going, so that you can actually stabilize the pelvis and not have it, your hip, and not have it kind of like flipping around all over the place. If you don't have that core contraction, your likelihood of injury goes up. And usually what that's caused by is latency in contraction. What I mean by latency in contraction is there's a delayed contraction. So the core is not actually able to fire as rapidly as we would like, which is going to lead to that instability in your low back or in your core, in your midsection, that's going to cause that injury or cause that poor movement pattern to kind of go about throughout your training. So if you can imagine, if you were a runner and you're running on a full stomach, one, it's probably not really comfortable to be running on a full stomach, as it's probably not comfortable running on an empty stomach. But if you are running on a full stomach, you're also carrying around extra weight on top of the added awkward feeling in your midsection, in your stomach, where you start noticing a little bit more pressure in your spine. You start noticing the back gets a little bit more sore. Your stomach kind of hangs out a little bit further forward. That's because your body's unable to really contract the core and keep everything packed in and allow the legs to move the way they're supposed to. That holds true for someone who's training. So if you're a big time power lifter and you're lifting a lot of weight, or if you're just getting into squatting or you're getting into deadlifting, you know more than anything that core stability is huge. So if core contraction is not there, your ability to really support that amount of weight you're trying to push your body through and put your body through is really not going to be well taken. Your back's going to be severely compromised. Your movements are going to be really poor, and your numbers are probably just not going to be that high because you're not going to have that stability and that rigidity throughout your entire body to be able to promote, to be able to complete that exercise the way you would like to. So what I would usually tell people is when you're looking at what to eat before you train, one of the things you should probably do is, number one, go as natural as possible. So remove all potential I'll look around here. I don't have any chemicals around here, but processed foods. So try to avoid processed foods. They're a little bit more difficult to digest. And because they're a little bit more difficult to digest, the time between consumption and digestion is going to be a lot longer. It's a lot more drawn out. So number one, avoid those, really like inorganic foods, I would say, or chemically modified foods or processed foods. If you can avoid that, your likelihood of being able to almost digest that food quickly is going to go up. So stick to natural foods. The closer you get to your race, the more easily consumable and digestible you want that food to be. So as you get closer to your race, workout, run, whatever it may be, you want to go to something that's a little bit more fruit, kind of a little bit. I probably want to go very much on vegetables. Vegetables carry a lot of fiber in them, so they're going to be a little bit more difficult to digest, but fruits are pretty good. That's going to keep you kind of full, but not kind of impede your body's ability to contract the core properly. So number one, go something that's easily digestible as you get closer to your race. If you're a little bit further out, you can go, if you're race. I keep saying race because I keep thinking about the running thing, but I mean your run. When you're going for your run, if you want to go, if you're about an hour and a half out, you can probably go to something a little bit more, a little bit thicker. So you can go with, an average size, meat and, veggie, fruit portions. So you can go with something a little bit more normal in terms of meal size. You don't want to overdo it. So what I usually like to tell people is stop at 80%. Once you get to that 80% full range, just pull the plug right there, stop there, because anything further is just going to cause you to almost feel groggy, drowsy. And once you start feeling those things, your likelihood of having an overfull stomach is very high. You're not going to be able to contract the way you want to. You're not going to be in the right position. You're asking for problems at that point. So what I would tell you is definitely try to consume as little food as possible as you get closer to the race or closer to your workout. And as you get further, if you're further away, you can start consuming a little bit more. Try to avoid that amount of food consumption. It's usually not beneficial for an athlete as well. You want to be able to digest the food properly before you're done training. You're going to feel better. You're just going to be able to, perform better. And honestly, like, I think I read it over the last couple of weeks. One of the things that I noticed was that when I stopped eating to the point of complete fullness, my energy level was a lot higher. So I was actually able to take in food and still be able to function throughout my day the way I wanted to. I didn't feel as groggy and as drowsy. Usually when I was overeating and consuming a heavy dose of food and I was stuffing myself, I usually felt a lot worse, and it was kind of a battle throughout the day. So one of the little changes I made in my kind of routine throughout the day is consume a little bit less per meal, so that I'm making sure that I'm not overdoing it, and I'm just kind of spreading out the meals and eating more nutrient dense foods, but just kind of consuming a little bit less, so that I'm not kind of compromising my body's position. The other reason I'm saying that is because when you are driving, let's say I take someone who's sitting in a car, and that's a pretty good point. I actually should have thought of that earlier. But kind of happy I did about now, not when the show is over. But if you are driving a lot, you spend a lot of time driving, one of the things I notice is that people eat a big breakfast, then jump in the car and go to work. And they notice that when they get to work, before they even get to work, their back's already sore because you've just stuffed yourself with food, and then you sit in the car and now your back is in your body's position is compromised. The same thing happens at work. when you're eating and you sit down for a very long time, you relax the core muscles, you stuffed yourself up. So you're adding two things. A, you're adding the inability to contract, you're adding laziness. You're combining those two. Chances that your body is going to be a little sore by the end of the day is pretty high. So try to consume less food, try to be more active on that, because it's one thing that I noticed that a lot of my athletes have changed. I've changed that a lot with my athletes, making sure that when they were coming to the workouts, they had eaten their breakfast. And if they had eaten a big breakfast, it had been early enough in the day that they weren't coming to the workout hungry. Usually I will never let my athletes come to the workout and stuff their face or eat a lot of food right before they lift, because usually what we're doing is anything past the first 2 or 3 weeks starts really getting heavy and just puts a lot of pressure on their body. So if they're not in the optimal position at all times, there's a high risk of injury, and that's something that's going to set us back way more than we need. So we usually try to recommend making sure that there's a big time gap between when they've eaten and their workouts. And if they're in the workout and they're really hungry and they want to take something small, it's usually very, very quickly digestible fruits. Cantaloupe, banana is pretty easily digested. So things that are very, very soft, you eat them, you're good to go. They're not like an apple. Apple has a lot more fiber in it, so it's a little bit more difficult to digest. It's still very, very fast, but I don't really like it that much as an in-workout meal. I'm more partial to something like an orange, cantaloupe, banana, something that's a little bit softer, less fibrous. It's not going to cause as much of an impedance in your digestive system. So get some of that going in practice. Keep that in mind the next time you are about to eat and go to the gym, because I think it's really important. I think it's something that a lot of us should be taking a little bit more seriously. And until that next time, guys, keep building that foundation.